And now it's time to really look at it and see what really happened. One thing that's very important for everyone to know before we look at why this marriage fell apart is one problem that people think is the reason why, which is an affair. Whenever someone has an affair, it's really because that person just is unhappy and really doesn't have any other way to cope with the difficulties. So if your spouse has been cheating on you, your spouse has also been cheating him or herself because they really weren't able to talk about things. An affair is really a very easy way for people to get angry and to blame each other. But in actuality, until we each look at ourselves and look at the real problems, the real issues, no one is ever going to be able to get on with their life. Okay, let's look now at some of the reasons why the marriage stopped working. First of all, how do any of us really know how to be in a marriage? The only way we learn is from looking at our parents' marriage. If our parents' marriage worked for them, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for us. If our parents' marriage didn't work for them, well then we certainly really don't know how to be in a marriage. But unfortunately, people just do things in automatic instead of thinking about it. One important point that I really want to get across is now it's time to think without blaming yourself, without blaming your ex-spouse. Let's just look at the past. So part of the past is childhood. What happened to any of us in childhood has a great deal to do with how we are in a marriage. For those of you who were really very lucky and treated very well and very well taken care of in your childhood, the tendency might be to expect that your spouse is going to do the same thing and take care of you in the same way. But that's not going to happen. Your spouse is your spouse, not your parent. So for those people, you might have to learn about how to give back instead of just expecting things to come your way automatically. Again, none of this is your fault. This is how you were brought up, but now it's time to think and look at it. For the other grouping of people who really weren't treated so well in childhood, the tendency of those people is to either feel like they deserved to not be treated well. Well, that's not true. You really deserve to be treated better, and you really deserve to know how you feel and to know that it's justification if you're not happy, and to think about it, not just to be feeling rejected and victimized. There's another grouping of people who weren't treated so well, who try to protect themselves. And unfortunately, the way people protect themselves sometimes hurts other people. And in the long run, it hurts them too. So we really don't want to be doing any of that anymore either. One of the very important stages of all this occurs in the beginning, and it also happens intermittently throughout a period of several years, depending on the length of the marriage. And that's the need to mourn. Everybody needs to grieve and mourn over the loss, whether you were the one who wanted the divorce or didn't want the divorce. And for the people who didn't want the divorce, I'm sure you really weren't happy either, but maybe there was just too much fear and too much pain to really look at it. So now it's happened, now it's time to cry. This is the death. It's the death of all of the hopes and the dreams that both of you really had hoped would really happen for the rest of your lives. Most people who are experiencing mourning in the first year find that in different holidays, anniversaries, certain times of the year when you first met, it's really going to be very painful. And the tendency, again, of most of us is to try to get angry at that so-and-so instead of facing the fear, feeling the fear. It's really not so bad once you let yourself feel it and know that you will get through it. As the years go on, you might still continue to feel it, at certain anniversary times, certain birthdays, a year or two later. But you'll continue to feel it in a heavy extreme unless you really allow yourself to have a lot of mourning in the beginning.
Margie, why do we feel so guilty about divorce?
Well, we're really all brought up to think that we're supposed to follow certain rules and do things that might have worked in the past, instead of realizing that the old rules really don't work anymore, Jeannie. It's really more about men and women taking responsibility for themselves and speaking up when things aren't working in the marriage. Actually, the people who go through divorce are the ones in society who have the courage. The courage to really look at themselves and to look at what's making them unhappy. It is true that courage only comes after someone's feeling an enormous amount of pain, but there are a lot of other alternatives. There are a lot of people who live in unhappy, empty marriages. To me, those are the failures. The people who are watching this tape and the ones who are coping with the feelings are the ones who have the courage to take the risk and move on through this.
Well, I know in my case, it wasn't so much a matter of courage. My husband left. I mean, he really abandoned us and he never came back. And so it's very hard, and a lot of women are in that situation. The man is just gone, you know, and then you think, all right, what am I going to do? I think that's where the courage comes in, because then you have to continue with your life, and it doesn't stop, and, and you're just alone. So I think that, you know, and I felt guilty. I felt like, well, I had failed him. I didn't feel like I had done a good thing in that I was raising my children by myself. And I mean, I had to feel all of that guilt. At the same time I was feeling all of that mourning and all of that loneliness and all that emptiness, I was also dealing with all those other emotions that the divorce will bring to us. And, you know, I don't know how to, or how to tell the people to take the road that will get them out of this. There are short-term plannings and long-term plannings. Can you help us with that so we know where we're going from here?
Well, part of the short-term planning is to really know that you didn't really do anything wrong. You were doing the best you could, and so did he. Everyone does the best they can. No one begins a marriage trying to be hurtful to someone else. There's just really no way of predicting how people can change. So in the situation you're talking about, where you were just left, so there isn't the reason for guilt or having the courage to make the decision, you're now left with the obstacle of dealing with all of the problems and knowing that you need to get as much support as you can, information from people. That's the short-range planning. You certainly need legal advice. You need support from friends. You need to be able to talk to people when you are feeling angry instead of acting out on your kids or on family members or anyone or on yourself. A lot of people who are really unhappy and don't know how to cope act out on themselves, and they get depressed and may get into substance abuse, looking as a way to cope instead of facing the feelings.
I've heard that some of the ways that the people are coping are alcohol, drug use, obesity is a big cause. A lot of people are physically ill. They just don't do well and they can't seem to get up. Is there some way that we can help them, the people who are in this situation?
Well, I'm going to sound repetitive because the main theme is we all have to know what we're feeling. Because when we don't know what we're feeling, we keep those feelings inside. And that's when it does really destructive things. Makes us feel angry, makes us feel bitter, depressed, wanting to use some kind of substances or smoke, drink, overeat, all kinds of things like that. And all those things are avoidances of the feelings of, you know, of the pain that everyone feels.
Is there something that we can do to replace, you know, we have this big loss in our life. Is there something that we can do in this middle period, from when they're actually gone to when we're sort of strong enough to make it? There's this period of time there. Is there anything that we can be doing that will help us get through that time period? Because that first year or year and a half, the first 6 months, you're sort of in shock. I mean, you're surprised that you're there and you're raising this child or children by yourself, and so you just move day to day to day to day because that's what you have to do. But you get far enough down the road and you look back and you say, you know, here's this big empty place. What do you do?
Well, the best thing I can think of is to really be optimistic and to realize this is an opportunity for growth and change. You can make your life now what you want it to be. You're no longer trapped, you're no longer unhappy, you're no longer a victim. It's already happened. The worst has already happened. So if we look upon this as a time, again, for learning, for opportunity, to make changes, to find out what made you unhappy, what made him unhappy, and learn from it and realize that you can make another relationship even better. And all of this, you can know at this time, will really help you in any future relationships. Because one thing I found that really scares people is getting into other relationships, feeling of mistrust, feeling of being hurt again, feeling of being confused and not knowing what went wrong. And there's really no reason to mistrust if you learn to trust yourself by knowing your own feelings, by doing all this work that we're talking about. So the easiest thing to do is to look in the mirror and look at yourself and say, what am I feeling and why? Because it's about me. It's about you. It's not about him and them and the blaming.
Sometimes that's not an easy thing to do, to look in the
No.
mirror, because you do blame yourself, and you look back. That's the one good thing about getting further down the road for you, because you can look back and you can say, okay, you know, we did this wrong, let's do it right. Let's learn from this, and let's not make this mistake again, and let's not get in relationships that aren't good for us, and so we can go forward with a healthy relationship. And I think that that's very important.
Yes. Yes, it is. And as you said before, it's very hard to really look at yourself. But the reason why looking at ourselves is hard is, again, because we feel bad. You know, you didn't do anything wrong if you were the one who left or if you were the one who did the leaving. You're really just becoming aware of your own feelings and realizing that your life isn't working anymore. And that really takes, you know, as I keep saying, courage. Not only courage if you're the one to make the decision, but courage to look at yourself if you were the one who feels victimized instead of feeling angry and stuck, to realize how you can learn from it.
Understand?
It isn't easy, it isn't simple, but there's a lot of hope out there. Because my belief is, from all the work that I've been doing, is that whether you were the person who did the leaving or was left, neither one of you were happy. And so this can really mean a big change for your life, and learning how you can be happy.
Do you have some suggestions for us, how it is that we can be happy? What steps do we take?
Even though it seems like right now you feel like you'll just never be happy again, the important thing to know is you're already on the right track, because you're watching this video and you're trying to learn something about what happened. While the natural tendency of people is to think that another relationship is going to make you happy, it really isn't. But it's an important thing, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But first I just want to say, you've really got to look to yourself to find out. Now you can see what makes you happy. Now you can use this time to do some of the things you may not have had the time, the motivation. You may have felt restricted in the marriage, been unable to do certain things, certain activities, more time with hobby, a lot of time with friends. It's really important to get a lot of support from good friends. Cry if you need to. Talk about your anger with your friends. And this helps you prepare to get ready to move on. I know everybody's eager to find out about dating and other relationships, so I will talk a bit about that. It's important to know how your mate really stopped meeting your needs. Again, there's no need to blame yourself or your mate. No one knew better. We're all learning now. So realize now that if certain things were lacking in your marriage, and you know for sure that those are things that you are going to want for yourself, that you're entitled, and you'll really know how to look for it in a person. If communication is a big problem for most people, either people talk about the wrong things, or they don't talk enough, or people are just afraid to communicate with each other and don't want to hear things about someone else's problems. For some people, you have to know the level of communication that's most comfortable for you. There's some couples who really want to just, you know, raise their kids, do some social things together, and don't want a great deal of intimacy and connectedness. Other people really want what's called a soulmate. Whatever you want, you can get it. You know, it's up to you to really know what's important to you.
I'd love a soulmate. Where are we going to find him? Where is he at?
Well, you have to really get yourself out in places where you're going to meet new people, do hobbies, let it be known among your friends. There are various ways. An important thing also is to just go on about living your life. You know, things have a way of happening if you don't feel so bogged down by sadness and anger.
Margie, I noticed that one of the things that happened to me in my divorce was my self-esteem was so low. I mean, I didn't believe in myself. I didn't think that I could do anything good. My marriage, I considered it was a failure. The kids were, you know, acting up because they didn't know what to do. I mean, what can people do to help keep that self-esteem up, especially during the time of the divorce itself?